I have an apology from Councillor Fraser, and also believe we are told you have an early departure.
About 10:45.
So I'll move those apologies to be accepted. On the second, please thank you, Councillor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Any leave of absence?
Thank you. I will need to leave by 1 if we're not finished by then.
Thank you. Any leave of absence? There's no conflict of interest in the agenda items. Right, we have some special guests here this morning for our public forum. So each person has the opportunity to speak in 10 minutes, and then we may have some questions for today. Sam, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we'll first have Hilary from Adellusa Community Board to present to us. So please take a second.
First of all, hi Sam. Thank you for joining us on behalf of the Ardlesser Community Board. Appreciate that very much. And actually, before I start, I did want to thank Rob and Kelly, who's here, and Tina Harvey, who have actually done a lot of work with the Ardlesser Board already, helping us with advice, doing homework, and getting it to this stage, as well as Ashley. So the Community Board is very grateful for the help that we are continuously getting, and superb help it is as well. So thank you, councillors, for giving us the opportunity to come to your meeting to talk about our mountain bike proposal. After I have shared on behalf of the Community Board, Sam Ruddenclaw will detail how cycling in New Zealand is a growing multi-million-dollar activity that will bring huge economic, social and cultural growth, not to just Waikaia and the Ardlesser Board area, but to the whole of Southland. Colleen Morton, who is a resident of Waikaia, will also speak about the educational opportunities that the mountain bike track can bring to the whole of Southland. As a member of the new Ardlesser Community Board, I attended the induction workshop in November last year. One key point that struck me was, as a board, we needed to take responsibility for the development and growth of our area. The level of impetus we put into our role will determine the benefits experienced by the whole Ardlesser community in Southland. Waikaia Forest is one of the many jewels in the Ardlesser area that we identified as a potential growth area. This proposal to develop a mountain bike track in the Waikaia Forest came from a local member, Daniel Butler, who came forward, shared his vision, shared his ideas, and he is a keen mountain biker. This proposal is community governance that can become community-led development. And this is exactly what you spoke to us about at the induction workshop. The mountain bike track will bring many opportunities to Waikaia and neighbouring areas. New businesses offering complementary services such as bike hire, bike washing, bike maintenance and repairs, hot pools and hospitality options. It can offer diversification opportunities for existing businesses, homeowners and landowners. Events can be staged to draw in enthusiasts when local clubs will have opportunities to be involved and fundraise, and businesses will benefit. Local history, culture and art can be incorporated using track names, for example, to showcase the diverse stories of our area. Businesses can be approached to sponsor tracks, increasing their exposure to a wider audience from the country. At a board meeting recently, we were informed by a group of knowledgeable mountain bike enthusiasts and business-minded people that Southland is lacking a mountain bike track of this type, that mountain bike club members love being involved in track building and maintaining tracks, and they want Southland to grow in this multi-million-dollar activity. We have done initial investigation into how tracks are designed, who best to design them, how they operate, how they develop. We know there is an app called TrailForks that is used worldwide by trail riders. We've read other track master plans and will work with those groups to establish good plans for health and safety, maintenance, etc. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have all this tried and tested information at our fingertips, as well as the incredible support from people like Sam, Jared Hope, who run Bike Glendu, Richard Pascoe and Daniel Butler, who are part of the Hokonui Mountain Bike Club. They are working with us. We have been doing our homework. The government is urging domestic tourism in these COVID times. This proposal to develop a mountain bike track in the Waikaia Forest is for all New Zealanders to enjoy, not just locals, not just Southlanders. It is not dependent on international tourism. It fits the government's plan for economic growth in our country, in Southland, and in the Ardlessa area. The Ardlessa Community Board therefore asks you to support our proposal and improve option 1 to amend Waikaia Forest to access permissions to allow public access for the purpose of the mountain bike track. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Very good.
So Sam's going to speak now.
Well, before you start.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Have I still got time in my 10 minutes? I've been smacked on the hand for 10 minutes before.
Before we get on to the next speaker, are there any specific questions? Would you like to hold it until all three speakers have spoken? All right, Sam, can you hear us? You're right there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm Sam Ruddenclaw. I'm a chartered accountant up in Gore. I'm also a director and shareholder of Bike Glendu Limited, which is a mountain bike park that opened in January in Glendu Bay, Wanaka. So that's a privately run park on private property, with the landowners being a shareholder in that. And the reason that we set that up and the reason that they wanted to be shareholders and put forward 1,000 hectares of farmland into a mountain bike park was that they wanted to share their property in a way that was sustainable, eco-friendly, and they are really big on health and well-being. So it's an area of outstanding natural landscape up there, and I mean if you go to the top of the hill, we've got tracks right up to the top. You would understand just how special it is, and you know that mountain biking has allowed that land to be open up to the public because it's something from their perspective that financially is more viable than farming. So that's a little bit of background about me and I guess my involvement in mountain biking. I've been a mountain biker for years, but the reason that I got involved in that project, A, because I love mountain biking, but B, I could see economically what's happening in the mountain biking sector. And Ashby has put a few of the numbers in the report that he's provided. But just for example, e-bikes, that's one of the major reasons that I've got involved. E-bike imports into New Zealand in 2017 were 23,000, rising to in 2019 65,000. Now, if you multiply that by $4,000, which is probably pretty light for a e-bike, that's $268 million of e-bike sales in New Zealand in 1 year. And the way the trajectory is going, it's looking like e-bikes are going to, well, new e-bike sales are going to be higher than new car sales in the not too distant future. So that, and I mean, if you go biking around anywhere, we went for a family bike ride a couple of weeks ago at Arrowtown, and it was probably 10-to-1 e-bikes to normal bikes. So that e-biking sector has introduced a whole new raft of people into mountain biking. And a lot of those people are people that have got reasonable disposable incomes. And they're keen to explore New Zealand, particularly New Zealand now that overseas is not so much of an option. And I guess going back to that, like we opened back in January, we had a focus on international tourism. We thought that that was going to be a great income generator for us, just for people coming in for a day trip, wanting to explore something, something different than going up Roy's Peak with the masses of people that do that. So, but since COVID and since lockdown, the local support that we've received has been absolutely massive. Just blown away by the number of locals, and not just locals, people from Christchurch, Queenstown, down this way, that are coming up or coming down and wanting to go riding and wanting to explore. And that's also very evident in, if you go into any bike shop now, there's not many bikes available, and even more so, not many parts available, because people during lockdown wanted to do some exercise. They got out, got their old bike out of the back of the shed, dusted it down, and have been out biking. And now the bike shops are overrun with maintenance requirements and people wanting to get out and get biking. And I've just myself been looking for a new bike just recently, and for kids for Christmas, and they're basically saying forget about it. February, March now before you'll get something, because worldwide biking is just taking off. So I guess how does that apply to Waikaia? Look, I look at it compared to likes of a Naseby, small town similar to Waikaia, got forestry around it where mountain bikers are able to ride and build tracks. I mean, from my perspective, that it hasn't been well managed there. Like there's not, from the start, there wasn't a plan in place around cohesion, around how the tracks were going to be built. So that, there's some learnings to be had there. But in Naseby, there's 2 pubs, there's a lot of accommodation, and often during summer it's all full. There's a cafe, so there's a lot of other business that's developed primarily because of mountain biking, because if you go up there and stay during the summer in the camping ground, 90% of people that are there to go mountain biking. The rail trail, but small towns are also quite a good example of this, where Hyde in the middle of nowhere doesn't have a lot else going for it in the winter. In the summer, it's a hive of activity because of the rail trail that's there. West Coast, the old Ghost Road, which is a track over there, a couple day long track. There's some study done around tourist bed nights on the West Coast, and of all tourists, the average bed nights is 1.56 nights that people stay over there. For the biking sector, or the people that are there to ride the tracks, it's 4.9 nights. So there's basically 3 times the time frame that they're staying to go biking. And I mean, I can go on about this. Rotorua, massive industry up there. They're talking somewhere between 200 and 350 full-time equivalent jobs are up there solely because of mountain biking. And that's a public land. Well, sorry, it's run by the local iwi, but free biking. But yeah, just the spin-off from that is massive up there. Nelson's another area that's similar to that. They're talking well over 200 full-time equivalent jobs there currently, and looking forward into the next 10 years, they're saying that's going to well over double, up into over 500 full-time equivalent jobs. So to me, and this is all pre-COVID, and I mean, COVID was a terrible thing for a lot of people, us included, up at the mountain bike park, but it's certainly, I guess, all fitness and all well-being certainly has been brought into focus since then. There's a lot of people that are really keen to get outside, enjoy the fresh air. And I know personally, from my perspective, I mean, we live 25 minutes down the road from Waikaia, and would be up there all the time. Our kids love mountain biking, not just because we've got a bike park, but they just love getting outside, and it's a great family activity. So, that's my bit. Happy to take any questions or anything like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your presentation. And, we'll get on the questions later on. Colleen, I'd like to introduce you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gary, councillors. Thank you, Hilary, for the invitation to come and present myself here for what I think is very forward-thinking. We've only just moved to the district of Waikaia, and I'm suitably impressed at the people, the community, the facilities and the forward thinking of the people in the district and the Ardlasa board. But I'm Colleen. I am a Davis facilitator, so I work with the dyslexic, dyspraxic, ADD, ADHD people, adults and children. We are continually looking for places to take these people who excel outside of the classroom. And history is telling us in education that when we regularly implement things like mountain bike riding, rock climbing, kayaking, all of those outdoor activities, the ability for a person to become a lot more calm, reduce the anxiety to do the learning of the literacy and numeracy is certainly accelerated. So I work in areas Waikaia, Riversdale, Lumsden, Garston, Balfour Gore, Waikaka, Tapanui, Matara, Windamino, right through Tokanui. I am the only facilitator in Southland, so I always try to find these things to do within the areas of where I'm working. However, I am involved in outdoor education and senior PE camps as well. And Waikaia really is somewhere that a school camp with the facilities already in place. You've got a great river for kayaking, you've got rock climbing, you've got safe running, you've got hikes. Piano Flat is just fabulous for all of their learning. And so, you know, with the museum, the gold mining, the tunnels down to, I just recently explored those tunnels and I was blown away. The people I work with, certainly, that is their talent, you know. I can think of three very talented bikers whom I have worked with, and one in particular has had a go at building tracks himself on their own private land. And, you know, we also have in place in education these gateway programs whereby we're taking senior students out of the classroom on a regular basis during the week to provide some community input and their talent. Now, these guys who Sam talked about out at the Waikaia meeting who design these tracks, this is where they come from. You know, if I can get them from 5 to 17, 18 in education, working at places like this and seeing the three-dimensional tracks and what's possible, the world is the oyster, and I certainly see many extremely talented students. So thank you for your ears, and I am all go. I will be there for the funding and the fundraising. Love it. Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Just a few comments from myself. An excellent presentation. Thank you. And also, Sam, I'm not forgetting you about you. So, good presentation. And it's good to hear the acknowledgement of staff as well, with their involvement and also your involvement as a council in the area. I also attended one of the community board meetings when this was discussed, and there was certainly a lot of enthusiasm within the community board, which was really excellent. You can certainly see the economic benefits for the community, but also district-wide as well, so that's really good to hear as well. And also it's good to hear the board taking the positions that you have and doing your homework, taking a real lead into this community, and being that government's role. That's what the community boards is all about. So it's really great to see that community board like yourselves have picked this up, grabbed it, and said, right, let's drive this. So congratulations on that as well. It'll certainly create some diversification for the area, but also for South District as well. So I've talked about economic benefit and also the domino effect for other businesses as well here to grow, with the introduction of new business as well within the area. So there's the opportunity to create some significant employment as well. So it has certainly ticks a number of boxes like what you've presented to us. And of course, the health outcomes, the benefits to the well-being of the community, but also others who join the community, the outcome of the well-being and health perspective of those people that participate. So I'd like to open up for questions. If anybody's got any questions of the three presenters, I was certainly very impressed. I think it's a fantastic initiative. I'm confident that Council will provide a lot of support for your initiative. So questions? Councillor.
I'd be curious about what sort of dollars you'd need to fundraise for. Is it coming to hundreds of thousands, or what sort of money do you need to use?
Well, the report will detail that at this stage, the Ardlasser Community Board have planned an unbudgeted expense of 20,000 to do the initial scoping of it. Sam and the knowledgeable ones said you can spend between $10 and $25 per metre. The plan for the 50Ks we would have would be a staged thing. We certainly wouldn't attempt to build 50Ks all in one go, but we would have a plan at the beginning to see the whole picture. As Sam said about Naseby, you don't let it evolve. You start with your plan and we go from there. So we will obviously be looking for fundraising and sponsorship. And when we engage the services, when we have permission of a company that's been advised to us, which is Elevate and Tom Hay, that's based in Queenstown, he will do the big picture map, and then we can divide it up, and he will be advising us which stages we do. Am I right in saying that, Sam?
Yeah, that'd be correct. We use Tom Hay, Elevate Trails, to do our work up at Bike Glendhu. We're consented for 50 kilometres of trails. We are approximately 35 kilometres through now, and it'll probably be another 2 or 3 years, I would imagine, maybe even longer before we're up to 50Ks. But yeah, Tom's been involved right from the start. He spent 3 or 4 days out scoping the landscape, and what he has achieved in the building and also in the vision is just remarkable. I mean, he's got a real eye for how tracks should flow, and if you've got to climb somewhere to get to somewhere, then there's got to be a reward out of that. And so just the level of trails. I mean, we set out to be a world-class facility, and using Tom has certainly helped achieve that. He goes around the world designing and building tracks. He's in hot demand worldwide. So, there's some of the best riders in the world will go and ride Tom Hay's tracks because he's built them. We had a guy come out, he's probably the best rider in the world, come out to New Zealand to ride and produce a video on tracks at Bike Glendhu, and we've had several others since, just straight off the back of the fact that Tom Hay has designed and built the tracks.
Jolly good, thank you. Thanks for the encouragement.
Thank you.
I think it's good to hear the approach that's been taken about doing that groundwork from the start and step by step. We've got internal expertise here in the organisation as well, the council that you can utilize, and we're looking expert as well. So it's a good project management process that I can see. So.
Thank you.
So through the chair, all my questions have been answered, and I echo the sentiments of the chair and what his summing up is. Fantastic cooperation with everybody from a concept that's come from somebody who knows all about it. So top marks for everything you've done. The only concern that I had was that I didn't spend enough on an e-bike. I thought 4,000 was enough.
So that's, thank you. Councillor Davis, you have a question?
Yes, an excellent concept. Yeah, it's a great idea, and I've done the Naseby trials, and just appreciate what you're trying to achieve. So, what level of ability are you targeting, or will there be various levels, various grade trials within the Marakai Forest? Are you going to start at sort of easy for a start and then build up, or you're going to put some tough things in for a start? Depends on those extreme guys and girls. Yeah.
So the plan is most definitely to meet the needs of all levels of biking. We're certainly not looking just to satisfy the elite bikers and the thrill seekers. We want to satisfy the families with young children and the nana bikers amongst us, which is me. So in regard to the building process, that's where we will be looking to Tom Hay when he looks at the area, scopes it out, has the big plan for the big 50Ks. And I have every faith in him that when we build a track, there will be something for everybody at the beginning, and that something for everybody will expand as it goes on. Would you say that would be a fair presumption, Sam?
Yes. Yeah. So once again, going back to what we've done, we've got a family loop, or Kakariki it's called, that is, I think it's about 14 kilometres of green trail. So we use the same grading system as ski field. So we've got green, blue and black. And so that for us was a key trail to have established right from the start, was that green family type trail. And then extending from that, some blue trails. And we've only got probably 2 or 3 kilometres of black hand-built type trails that are more technical. But a lot of our trails, and once again, this come back to Tom and his skills, are rideable by a lot of people. Maybe not everybody, but most people can ride them. But depending on how fast you ride them or what your level of skill is, you get a much different. Everyone has a different experience from that. Like my son, he's 8. We've got a jump line there that's 1.7 kilometres long. He's got 70 odd jumps on it. He loves it, but he just goes down it and just rolls over the jumps. They're all safe. He can do that. The best rider in the world can come along and have a completely different experience on that same trail. So it's all about, to me, it's all about the trail design and also the safety of the trails. People are going to get injured mountain biking. There's no doubt about that. We've had 2 helicopters taking people out on our trails, precautionary type deals. I mean, we have a first response vehicle there. We have people getting injured. That's going to happen. But because Tom has built and designed the trails, our injury stats or our numbers of injuries are well below trails that are just built, just by I'm not going to say backyard, but just people that don't have an idea around how trails should be. So that's also quite a key consideration that I see.
Thank you. I suppose the more opportunities for different experiences, you will have a wider market, and therefore you have a greater opportunity for success on the trails as well. So it's limited to one type of.
And I think from gathering what Sam says, that you will come back, you will start off on the family one, and then you'll think, well, I'll have a go at the blue one, and then I'll have a go at the black one. That I think it encourages people to be testing themselves, so it's not a once experience, like perhaps something like the Shotover Jet is. It's a thing that you can challenge yourself to get better and better at and come back to.
In your events.
And events. Yeah, apparently these enduro bikers like to ride for 12 hours as teams, and I don't get that, but they're saying they're hugely popular. So there are opportunities, and we were not just specific bike events, but Waikawa used to have triathlons, and we can incorporate all sorts of different events, and all of a sudden, you have got some kayaking, you have got hiking, you have got biking. The roads are safe to be running between events. There's also a quite big lake out there that's been left by the gold mine that we are also eyeing up as a potential opportunity to do some recreational something with. So we're not, we can complement all of the jewel in the crown that the Waikaia area offers, Ardlas, and in Southland, to be fair.
Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for, there's such an inspiring initiative, building on what the people of Waikaia have done already, and I'm a big fan of that area. I've grown up just over the hill at Waikaka. I wonder if there's an opportunity, just noting that it's pine forest up there, and I wonder if there's an opportunity for this council, given that this is real, these people are showing leadership up there. There's an opportunity, I suspect, for this council to show leadership as far as forestry management goes, and rather than just replanting the forestry, because this is going to be part of this trails network, I understand. We can look at replanting a diverse, sort of world-leading forestry block up there. That would complement the work that has been done around this bike trail network. So rather than monocrop pine forest, we know what problems that they have around harvesting.
So I presume that that will be discussed at a different forum.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, wonderful.
It'll be, as I say, I'm not dismissing it. I think that will have to be discussed in a different forum. It's not something.
Well, I mean, it's going to be part of this.
Councillor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also think it's a great project, although the bikes that I've ridden all have four wheels and a motor. But just regarding the forestry aspect of it, so I presume your needing for funding will be ongoing for reinstatement after harvest and so on. So there will be an ongoing cost. The other thing I just noticed, there was a mention of hunting, and I just wonder about the two together. And even if hunting is not allowed there, to accommodate the bike riding, I guess there's always the risk of poaching. And I just wondered what your thoughts were around rider safety in that element. I presume riders will wear high vis and so on. Is that...
Maybe if I could just interrupt you, maybe Ash, can you wish to make a comment on that from a safety perspective? And if so, can you come up to the table?
Yeah, well, there's a whole report to present.
Okay, so we'll cover that off later.
I can cover those.
Just cover that particular point if you could, please.
We would establish that.
Could you come up to the table, please?
In the MOU with that we used to incorporate in the variation with our forest manager, we'd address those points about. I mean, I left hunting in there as a something that needs to be coordinated. So it'd be restrictions and signage, and that would be part of the health and safety plan, and operational restrictions around when the bike trails are in use versus harvesting operations. There'd still be an ongoing need for pest control. So it would be, it's operational detail.
Thank you. That's right. Thank you, Jake. Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. Just say that the presentation is excellent and the enthusiasm is probably contagious, I think, and a lot of respect for the vision that you've put forward, and certainly for the note you've given around the importance of planning and planning ahead over the whole concept. I note that the community board is advancing the proposal and also supportive of the initiative. My question is around what do you see as the long-term interest and continuation and involvement of this project as a board, or is it likely to be driven from elsewhere? Because I can see the enthusiasm from the community and of course the involvement from Sam and others. What are your thoughts around that?
So initial thoughts are that we would set up a trust, and that trust, myself and Ray have expressed an interest as board members. We want to sit on that trust, and various other people, and we would then bring in our knowledgeable people, our community people, as well as board members. that will then drive it forward. And I assume, like all projects run by trust, that then becomes a fluid thing as the years go on, you know, that can change.
That's good. It's just understanding the relationship between the community board and what that trust might look like on a long-term basis. Yeah, considering that the upfront work is huge, and that you've already put a lot of effort, time and effort into that. Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I just want to commend you on your groups and your community's enthusiasm and interest in this, and I've got no doubt that you'll, you know, be able to fundraise whatever you would need to initially get it started. I have, however, seen quite a few community initiatives stop once the initial build of something, the ongoing drive for fundraising hasn't continued. And I just wondered, in all your research, or if you have a vision at the moment as with regards to the ongoing maintenance costs of a project like this.
Sam, can you remind us what you were talking about, maintenance costs on the track and how it works?
Yes, so I guess once again we're a little bit different in that we are a commercial operation, pay to ride basically. So we're set out to, say, have a world-class experience where we are. So from our perspective, maintenance is quite not a substantial, but a reasonably substantial sum of money per annum. And we've just probably spent in the vicinity of, I would say, $3 a kilometre on maintenance. Is that right? Yeah. No, sorry, $3 a metre on maintenance. So in the vicinity of 50,000 over this winter, just maintaining trails. And once again, it comes back to it, and we're experiencing it up there now with the snow that we've had. We had, before we opened, we had 170 mils of rain in 20 days. So it's all about the actual construction of the track and drainage. We've put in a heap of culverts over the last month while it's been wet, and we can see where that drainage is and is required. And that'll, this time next year, those same trails that are wet now will be in a much better state. So I guess once again it comes back to that initial build and, you know, how well constructed the tracks are. And we're seeing it, like it's happening up around Queenstown area, which is a voluntary trail network up there. I mean, they've got trails shut and they're just saying, just please don't ride them in, and people respect that because they the bigger picture and that those trails are there for a long period of time if they're well looked after. So, and mountain bikers are extremely keen and passionate people, and you know, we go out and do trail digging at night in the winter with head torches because that's what we want to do. So, yeah, it's all part of that mountain biking community, I guess.
Thank you, Sam. All right, I'll wrap it up here. I think you can take it from the positive comments that you've received that seems to be a lot of support for that initiative, the vision that you've identified. So no more questions. I think we'll thank you very much for your presentation and take all your comments and statements as we consider the report that's coming through.
Yep, so the report is coming up first, so is it okay if we just wait? Yep. No. No.
These girls have done a wonderful
He knows when to keep quiet.
That's
whatever Hillary's speaking.
So thank you very much, and I must apologise to Nick, which I introduced you earlier on. As you know, that there's a bit of a change in the roles and responsibilities with Matt and Nick, and Nick will be now coming to our services assets committee meetings in the future. So welcome, and I look forward to the long time. Any extraordinary urgent items? I don't think there is any. So we'll move to confirmation of the minutes of the held on the 9th of September. I will move for those minutes are correct. Okay, second those, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. We go to the Kaya Forest Mountain Bike Trail Access report, 7.1 on page 19 of your agenda. So, actually, since you're at the tail, we might as well.
Thank you. So you've heard a lot about the advantages and the vision from the community for this trail. Purpose of this report is just covering off some operational detail on the mechanism and establishing the mechanism to establish a governance structure for the trail and how that will coordinate with the commercial forest that's already in place. So one at the outset, there's three things that will work in parallel if this recommendation is approved. One is the establishment of a trust to take forward the ongoing operational control of the trail. Two is an MOU between the council and that trust for expectations about how that would work. And the third thing is a variation to our current forest management agreement with IFS to incorporate elements of the MOU. So those specific elements might be on an annual basis, review of the proposal for trail building, reviews of health and safety plans, coordination with harvest operations and pruning other forestry operations, and ongoing requirements for meeting attendance and coordination. So those three things are important to get in place if this proceeds. So I just I'm wondering whether it's better to take the report as read and open it to questions, given we've already discussed a lot of it so far.
That's good. Let's certainly do that. Just for clarification, do you see that the trust will be set up and then the community board will make an application for unbudgeted expenditure of approximately 20,000, and it would fund the trust to carry out that planning work? Is that how you see it? Just so I want that clarified.
I think the preference would be for the trust to engage the master planner, because they've already got a master planner in place, and they can do it. They've got that relationship there. We would have to write another report for an alternative procurement method if it was procured through the council, and establishing the trust and the master planning through the trust sets the whole project off on the right foot and as a community-led project. And I think it would be more, in my opinion, it would be more efficient.
I agree with you. That's why I sought that clarification. So it's the same way. Community board wants to sets up the trust. So just so so you cover the cost of funding of that, which is approximately 20,000.
This is just the purpose of this report is the operational change in the Waikaya forest rather than unbudgeted expenditure, just to clarify.
All right, I'll open up.
So specifically, I guess just it would be worth underlining that point. So the specific recommendation there is authorise a change in access permission to Waikato Forest to allow for public access, development and operation of mountain bike trails, conditional on formalising a variation in the agreement between IFS and council. That's the legal mechanism that needs to be established to give rise to that. And then that variation is informed by an MOU. So we can tie that when we put the work into establishing the MOU, we can tie that into the variation.
That's good. Councillor Duffy.
Just a question on that. So under D, it's the recommended that we authorise the change in access permission, etc. Is it for us to do that, or just to recommend to council that that's done?
My understanding through you, Mr. Chair, is that the Services and Assets Committee has delegated authority for access to the commercial forests.
Councillor Hart.
I did that before I did the presentation, Mr. Chair, but it has been a very good presentation across some of the particular points that I noted was that the community board had taken the initiative and got behind this project and done a very good job, and the presentation and the following conversations have covered the outside ahead. So once again, just congratulating on the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas.
So, this trail will be constructed within a commercial forest. So every 30 years or so, the forest is due to be felled. So what tension do you see developing, potential tension between the operators of the trail and the commercial interests of felling the forest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've tried to cover elements of that. It's important. I think the report actually speaks to the need or the notion that the commercial forest takes precedence. So any other secondary activities need to work around the commercial operations of the forest. But at least that's my understanding. And unless there's a change in policy or approach, the commercial operations take precedence over the mountain, any recreational operations. So that is why it's important to establish an MOU that sets out those expectations. MOUs aren't legally binding, but at the very least, the expectations on an ongoing basis for requirements on each party would set that out.
Councillor Byers, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just following on from Councillor Douglas's point there, and just to clarify, the trust is responsible for the funding of the capital works and maintenance. Is that right?
Yes.
And the trust would be responsible for the post-harvest establishment of trails?
Correct.
Okay, so Councillor Douglas has brought up this tension and the commercial forestry taking precedence. It would be a shame to see a lot of work go into establishing trails and then 100 hectares of pine forest felled, which I would assume would very much destroy the trails that would have to be redone. We're doing some landscape work at the moment on establishing different forms of or different criteria around landscapes. I wonder if there's some aspects of this forestry that might have a higher level of landscape recognition, in which case there might be some opportunity for this forestry block, some parts of it to be managed in a different way that would complement the work that the people of Waikato are doing with their trails. So rather than planting the pines, which need to be harvested every 30 years, there might be aspects of that area that could be taken out of that particular rotation, put into longer rotation crops, or move back into native forestry, which is probably what was up there. I'm no expert on.
So if I could make some comment, I suppose some of that will be taken into consideration as to how we manage the forestry block, because that's part of the council's responsibility. And some of the comments were made there will be discussed at that time. Second point is that my understanding when I attended the community board meeting, just correct me if I'm wrong, that where part of the forestry block is harvested, that it does damage part of those tracks, that there's new tracks that have been created, and that's sort of like an ongoing basis. So that ensures that you have that continuation of those trails, irrespective if they're at the same location, but in a couple of years' time, part of it may be in a different location. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a very, and it's analogous with, I alluded to Sandy Point there with the Southland Trail. That's very similar to what happens there. And the point I made in the report is they probably spend a lot more time coordinating than I would, and coordinating those two operations, because they haven't had, or they're working through establishing MOUs currently. And in terms of outlining the long-term plans for the forest and the harvesting areas, if you're able to coordinate that with the trust or the club or whatever gets established, you can mitigate some of that, rework essentially, and coordinate the trail building in a fashion that best fits with the commercial harvesting operations.
Yeah, the other thing too, of course, is that the harvester also go to the council.
Pardon me?
It's the same company. So they also work for us. But I don't see that there has to be a need for great tension, because the harvesting company also works for us harvesting our product. So I would hope that there would be a very professional relationship to ensure that the initiative continues on.
Absolutely. We wouldn't, with that said, we would be conscious of not reducing their operational efficiency.
Collaboration. Through council. Scott, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, the question I was going to say has been answered from what Councillor Davis was saying, but the long-term planning approach of both and the nature of how this planning is being done, I don't think there'd be any issues there, because they coexist worldwide, and we don't need to reinvent any wheels there. But I'd also just like to comment on that great presentation as well, and obviously provide my full support. But look, to me, this isn't just a mountain bike track. It's more. Waikato has always been a golden nugget in Southland, and I think this will add to that kind of capacity there, and it's a blueprint for community-led development, I think, in the day and age.
Absolutely. Well, I would encourage this committee to support the community board and the initiative and the recommendations that have been forward. And as such, I'm very pleased to be able to move the recommendations.
Having a second recommendation.
Excuse me. Okay. Just to ensure that we have a process for this to be implemented. Under recommendation D, we add and delegate the authority to the chief executive to sign the agreement. And under recommendation E, we add and delegate authority to the chief executive to sign the MOU. So that way we've got both of those, agreement and the MOU covered to ensure that we have delegated authority to the chief executive to sign those documents. Before I put the motion, I'll see Councillor Owen wanted to ask a question.
So the matter of the ongoing maintenance costs is going to be covered in the MOU, is that correct?
So I'm still happy to move those recommendations with the amendments.
I'm still happy to second it. Still happy to second it.
Second by Mayor Tom. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. And, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to item 8.1, service and assets program report on page 25 of your agenda.
Yes, yes.
All right. Do you want to introduce us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and morning, everyone. So I'll just talk through the key elements of the program report. As I've mentioned in a number of other presentations, this report is something that's still developing and ongoing in regards to how it's presented to governance and information that's important to governance to understand the operations of what's happening, and it's really interesting to take feedback on anything that we feel that we improve. One of the key areas I'll touch on is at this present time, the way that we have been reporting is for all that work that's been captured in camps. At that stage, it hasn't included the roading maintenance costs or the one-off internal projects, IT and the likes. We've met with finance just because that's captured in different locations within the national organisation. So we've met with finance and we're going to start working through to present the whole picture to the whole capital works program picture. Not just services and assets to governance, so that there will be an alignment to what you will see from the finance team. Sure. So please be with us in regards to how that. So in regards to this month's report, we now have everything loaded into the CAMS system in regards to the LTP. We've had works obviously now completed at Bond Street, and we have circa 45 staff relocated into that premises. 20 Don Street is progressing incredibly well. We will be able to start gaining access to that in mid this month, with the intention that we would be shifting across around 60 staff in November. At this point in time, we are still working through the final bits and pieces in regards to Chambers. It's likely that Chambers will remain to operate out here until the new year to ensure that we've got that Chambers set up and well tested. In regards to some of the major projects, we obviously had a report today in regards to the Tanner Wastewater project. That project is progressing well. The relationship between STC and our two contractors is working really well. And there's 2 packages of work, and we actually have construction to start in a couple of areas this month on both those packages. At this stage, this report covers the budgets and the works program associated with doesn't include, the 3 water stimulus. So that's still being worked through. We have likely to have that understanding of that by the end of this month in regards to the final use and what is likely to be delivered over the next, effectively through to the next end of this financial year and within the 18 months that we have completed. So once we have that agreed and in place, we will report that separately within this report. So it will sit sort of outside, while it will be delivered as part of that work program, it will sit outside so that you can see progress against the stimulus funding. In regards to completed projects in the last reporting period, we now have 9 bridges in the southern package completed, 3 bridges in the northern package completed. Obviously, 42 Don Street, which we talked on, Athol Railway project is now completed. Woodland Current Channel, Taondale water main replacement is now complete, and the install of the new CASA fuel tanks is complete as well. We have projects due to start over the next 2-month period. Monkey Island is due to restart in October. We are currently engaged with the contractor on that. Winton Library currently has a tender for design services. That closes every day. We had Te Anau wastewater processing plant to start, as I touched on. Te Anau water main replacement on Lakefront Drive, which we have and probably excluded today. And wastewater ponds are currently being fenced. We have only one bit to go, and the Belt Russell Road rehabilitation as well. So, in regards to the page 20, yeah, okay, excellent. So for this month, we have now taken out 1920. The formal carryover process is still to come through for council. But as we sit at the moment, $16.6 million was completed in 1920. As I've noted, that excludes the works in regards to the road and maintenance projects. And it also includes everything from our internal council capital review as well. In regards to 2021, as we sit on today, we have an annual budget plan of $2 million. We have a proposed carry forward of 5.5, which equates to $57 million for this financial year. Noting that again excludes the road maintenance budgets and excludes the stimulus fund. So that is, once we add those together, it's likely to be around $40 million for this financial year, which is a reasonable amount. So I will get that updated for next month's report. And finally, just a few other clarifications to get here was that so nothing else in regards to my presentation other than
can I ask just a couple of questions? One is on page 30, and we have in there, and that's COVID-19 supply issue. Can you just give us a bit of analysis of one
through Mr. Chairman. To date, it's been relatively good. We've been engaging with a lot of suppliers, we've been engaging with a lot of the manufacturers in regards to availability. At this point in time, there seems to be enough stock in New Zealand. Our biggest concern at the moment is the stimulus funding is right across New Zealand, or all local, obviously, TAs. And it could see huge demand come on in regards to the free waters packages. So we believe that as you can see at the moment, we're well ahead of that against the timeline. But we will need to consider through that works whether there is alternative procurement methods we may need to look at to ensure that we secure materials and products in advance of particularly other regions. We're obviously at the bottom of the country as well, which is logistic issues. But to date, we haven't seen anything too major from a delay point of view. But we're spending nothing at this stage. If anything, we've seen that a lot of the contractors are supplying the hungry to work out there. But we haven't seen any cost issues across the situation. Not at this stage, not that we've seen.
Any budget cost control?
Yes, in regards to budget and cost control, that's really been raised as it's a key area of focus for the service and asset team. As I noted last month, as part of our team, we now have a QS in there working at developing the way that we report to governance and the way that we do cost control of projects to ensure that the budgets are met. So that's really just a highlight to say that it's a key area of focus.
So I would see that in the future, progress in that area, there's possibly change.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And there's a lot of work being done between the service team and the finance team.
Okay, open up for any questions. Councillor Ford.
It's just a curiosity on the CAMS methodology. How do you initiate the projects that get into it? Because I'm conscious that it's an initiation stage. Some things are taking catching up. How do you get those to come from community board or this table from operations here? How do you initiate projects down here?
So through Mr. Chairman. So initiation of projects in CAMS is typically done either through service necessity or through key members within the SDC. That is one avenue that they come through. The second avenue is actually through the communities. And usually the community leadership teams work with the community boards in regards to the initiation of new projects. Effectively, the initiation phase is the idea phase. It hasn't been, projects haven't been tested or budgets set up often at that stage. So really, I guess the litmus just comes on at that next phase, which is the business case, before they formally go into a real reporting. But we try to capture within the initiation phase all those projects that are pending the next stage.
Yes, because a few of those things spoken about that need to be included. So put down some things like that. Progress into right, and then say, start looking for them. Nobody knows it.
Just, can you just clarify that to us? This
Levy in June, we did a application for some footpaths, and so far they don't seem to be able to system and without start.
That's what you're.
Yeah, so well, a new museum is the museum had to replace the footpath. Us done that before Christmas last year, and then applied for student forward. I just said, get some more footpath and tied it up a bit further. And so far, it doesn't look like it'll be done by Christmas. This Christmas. So it's in 12 months, and we said 4 or 5 months now. It should have been identified as being a project, however you do it. And we've got a board meeting on Monday, and we can't see when the next starts.
So through Mr. Chair, yes, I'm aware of the project. It has been initiated. It may not have just picked up in the camps. In regards to being reported on this month, we're obviously whether that one was initiated by the community board and is actually going to council for is it one budget?
Yeah.
Yes. So that project is progressing. So we'll get into the system.
Yeah, that's correct.
This stage go. That's it.
Well, A, it's approved. 2, and it's all done.
It's fun.
So can I just clarify then? So when we've got locally funded projects, then they won't go into CAMS unless they need to come back for unbudgeted expenditure. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, that would be correct, unless it will depend on who is delivering those projects and whether those projects have been run outside the community boards and whether they run. So whether the community boards have made a donation to a project that stops obviously from council's involvement. Where council involved in delivery or expenditure, then they would come through the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations. Practice commiserations.
Let's be
Just regarding the mowing contracts, you've awarded 3. Well, the one with Delta around Riverton. Delta doesn't use chemicals on the playgrounds. They just use manual means, no extra cost. I wonder if the consistency across the district that could be incorporated into your work with the tenders that are still coming up. 3 would be something of interest to
Through Mr. Chair. So for me, I'm not in a position at this point in time to really make that on that one. I'll pick up parts of what Matt has been working on some of the contracts that we have the one that I'll come back to.
Nigel? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Has the Ethel Railway project been signed?
Mr. Chair, yes, I believe it has. We have had a window bid that has pushed the railway carriages off the track. So we do have to find everything local to give us that head. But from an STC point of view, that project's been signed off. Actually, the boards have been put in place. And I think it's not really to that project.
Yes, so it's rail.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mr. Chairman, page 34, looking at projects by location. Are those district funded locations, district funded activities?
Yes, there will be a mix of how those projects are funded in that terms. Total.
Okay. Well, for the benefit of the district, it might be worth tracking the amount of funds that are spent in each part of the district. Just for interest's sake, given that I'm just referring to the ones that are district funded, is it possible to
have a split?
Just track the district funding as it moves around the district, and not just 1 year, but if we could go back, I mean, it might be easy enough to bring up a 10-year allocation of funding by district.
So you want historical information on,
yeah,
on different parts of district funding, depending on what projects have been undertaken at that time.
Well, if it's just as simple as patch it into the computer and out it comes.
Yeah, but I think you need some text around that as well. Just by providing numbers may not provide all the information that you might be looking for.
I'm just looking for the level of funding around different parts of our district, because I look at this graph and I see, well, I see 20 times the level of funding going to Te Anau versus to Oraka Aparima. And, you know, if that's consistent, then it doesn't represent, or it's not reflective of the level of population who are funding these projects.
Then also you need to take into consideration the age of some of the infrastructure and some improvements on the infrastructure. So that at the moment, the Florida area would look as though it's receiving a significant amount of money because of a significant upgrading of the Te Anau West district.
That's right. And
so therefore, it'll skew with the financials. So therefore, what I was saying is that you may need some text around it as well to explain what the numbers are saying.
Well, if we got the numbers, then it might become apparent that it's pretty even across the district. This area gets new pipes. That's why 10 years might be quite a nice sort of background, just to get an idea of where we are today, because this could be pretty snug. I mean, it is obviously 10 million versus 400,000 for another part of the district.
For various reasons. So as I say, I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's important we also provide text around the information that's being provided.
So are we able to get those numbers? Is it easy enough to do?
Through Mr. Chair. So the way that CAMS reports is on the total project budget. That information will be captured through finance in regards to how those individual projects are funded. CAMS doesn't differentiate in regards to the funding source, just a total reportable project spend. It would be finance that would have to extrapolate the information back through the previous years. And look, it's probably something I don't know, but whether that would actually be captured in some of the annual reports in regards to the district, what has been paid for through the district funding.
So just to move this forward, I understand where you're coming from. Okay. Let's take the tape there. We'll have a look at that with finance. So we can't make a commitment at this stage because we don't have any information available on how it's available. So dismissing it. What I'm saying is that we need to find out whether or not that information is there. What text we're able to provide around it before we reach an agreement today that this is what we're going to do. I will want to understand whether that's available and how it's available, and whether that information then is meaningful or not. So happy to have you involved with that, so that we can look at it too. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think the information's there.
Well,
We know that part.
well,
Yes, it's there.
we need to look at it in a holistic approach rather than just in silo. All right, is there any other comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you. I would support your recommendation for the text to come with it, because our decisions are made for the greater good of the whole area, and that the text is important to sit alongside that information. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on that? Just one question I have, the continuation of the discharge to the Yopapa River and the Environment South, and so tip for that. We keep hearing that it's ongoing. How is that progress? Are you close to an answer for you?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'm really not in a position today to understand exactly where that's at. I would need to come back to this next step. Yep.
I'll come back to you.
Yes, it's
There's a bit of risk there. Yep. Any other comments or questions? There being none, would somebody like to move that we receive the move recommendation 8? Thank you, Councillor Menzies. I have a second, Councillor Scott. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. We'll go into item 8.2 on page 41 of your agenda, down the water and wastewater removal contract, making August 2020.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I'll take the body of the report as read. I would highlight the under health and safety. There was a couple of incidents. They were a little unusual. One was a vehicle was parked just off the road, one of the contractor's utes, and he left his door slightly ajar. So it was slightly over the white line and someone managed to clip it. So yeah, it was a bit of a freak accident, but he's decided he was at fault. He wasn't far enough off the road. So there's a down as a following a process around that. The other one was just a loose vacuum hose on a sucker truck. There was no injury there, but it was an incident. And the third one was an axle stub failed on a trailer. So it had recently been maintained and inspected, and there was nothing wrong with it. It just failed. So the wheel came off the trailer. It was a double axle trailer, so it wasn't. It didn't cause an incident, but it was noted. So apart from that, the August went very well. Obviously this month, so I had some weather-related challenges, power cuts especially, and some localised flooding. But August went pretty smoothly for them.
Thank you. I'll open up for questions. Councillor Ford.
Yes, thank you. Item 5 on compliance. What attention do you give to non-compliant reports? You know, how do you have to fix them, or how do you manage that?
So Stewart Island is it's a limitation of the design of the whole place. So there's a project underway at the moment to upgrade those fields. That's well underway, so that'll improve the performance of that scheme. So from time to time, we do get slightly elevated nitrate levels detectable in that creek.
If you've got nightcaps as well, so is that...
Nightcaps is exactly the same. Yeah, it's a limitation of the process. So nightcaps especially is a traditional pond with an outlet to the creek. It's very basic. So that will come up for the next consent process. That will get an upgrade.
So by changing the drainage further, you just eliminate them.
Well,
Building a test,
they're two slightly different things. So the one on Stewart Island, by making the field much, much bigger, then you're disposing over a much wider area. So your local effect is reduced. Nightcaps doesn't have a distributed disposal to land. Stewart Island is more the way the other schemes are going to have to go, where we dispose to land rather than simply discharge to a waterway.
So how do we know that the nitrogen comes out of the?
Because it's upstream, downstream. So we take two samples. So if there's a difference, yeah. It's worth noting that sometimes the upstream has been higher than the downstream at Stewart Island. Because you get very high, it's a bush catchment, so quite often you get a lot of tannins and things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bill. When you do the drinking water tests for compliance, what is it, just the E. coli that you test, or are there a range of?
There's a range of tests. So depending on the size of the township dictates what tests are required under the drinking water legislation. So the main one is really chlorine residual. So we have to demonstrate that we're treating the water effectively. And the main one is to prove that there is enough chlorine to be effective. The secondary one is a coli. So we do test for a coli in the water. You shouldn't find any. The only time we've ever found it, there's been a backup test has never shown any more E. coli. So it's been operator error. When they've taken the test, they've accidentally introduced a bug to the sample. It's very difficult to have a perfect sample with no E. coli. There's quite a process of flaming the tap and sterilising everything. So. And there's other ones we do less often. So we test for, there's P2 testing around is the level of nitrates or lead or arsenic, are they elevated, that kind of stuff. But that's not part of the regular regime of testing. So it's weekly testing.
And are the results of these tests available on the website, or have we got access to them?
No, not typically. We pass them on here, but they, so the testing on the drinking water side of things is supplied to the Ministry of Health. And if we had a non-compliance, we would have to ring them straight away and go through a process. But as long as everything's going well, it just gets rolled up at the end of year to the Ministry of Health produces a report on all the drinking water supplies throughout the country and how they performed, but individual test results don't normally get published. There's hundreds of them.
Right.
Well,
I'm just wondering if it would be like if it's just a push of a computer, you can put them up there so we could just track the results in their communities.
It's normally done by exception, so you'd certainly know if we had a E. coli, positive for coli would be a boil water notice and letting everyone know that we had a problem. So you definitely know, but without that, you know that everything's been ticking along all right.
We need to be careful we don't get too bogged down in operational matters. And that's just, you get exceptional reports, which is an issue. Otherwise, we need to have confidence in our staff that are implementing the requirements, that are meeting the standards. So we need to be careful not to dig down too deep in that sort of operational.
Just following up from Mr. Chair, I mean, we are covered by that statement at the start.
Yep.
All drinking water treatments have been found to comply.
Yeah.
And I get comfort when I read that.
Yeah.
But we get assurance, and that's the key factor. So we get that assurance that everything's in order, and that's the main.
Councillor, yes, item one there, Bill. the contracts for water expire in 2022.
Correct.
That's only about 12 months away. What stage of procedure do you start looking towards the new contractor? And question may not be able to answer, how is going to be affected by our new waters department?
Great question. So we're well underway, and we've had advice from the new regulator side of things. We were looking at how do we re-tender a contract and allow for potentially a new regulator coming in and affecting it. So the official advice is business as usual. The legislation will cover that off. So it's fine, we just push on and re-tender the contract. So on that basis, we're undertaking a 7A review, which is a requirement of the Local Government Act. And then there's a bit of consultation involved with how the structure of the contract, because it's a significant contract. So
the question I have, just follow it, just a good question. To go through a re-tendering process is quite a lot of effort, time, money. Has the ability to roll it over for a 12-month period instead of going out for re-tendering. Is that possible? I don't know.
Yeah, there is, but it would be only one of the options we would look at. So one option would be roll it over, and for how long? Another option would be, re-tender it, and then is the current structure something we would reuse, or do we want to look at something else?
Even a rollover and slight variation to the potential changes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, correct.
So that's okay. You're looking at that, so that's good. I have a question with the fibre stripes.
Yeah. It depends, actually. So where they've taken every effort to locate the services and they hit something, and our plan said it was in one spot, but it wasn't, then the liability is with us. So if our records aren't good enough, we can't really expect them to take the blame. However, where we feel that they haven't taken appropriate measures to locate the services and they've caused us cost, then they pay.
Okay. That covers it.
Yeah, and generally they've been pretty good at coming to the party.
The ability to charge. Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. I was just wondering about the percentage. We've got our data wrong compared to where they haven't taken sufficient care.
A little hard to answer. It varies between contractor to contractor. Some of the crews are very fastidious. Some of them are moving a bit quicker and tend to be hitting a few more.
I'm just wondering, in terms of our data that we've provided to the contractor, is it generally correct?
Generally, but certainly nowhere near as good as it could be. It's something we're aware of and working on. So our records are, a lot of them are, because our infrastructure predates the digital mapping software we use. So the maps we do have are based on paper plans.
Right.
So, and those paper plans, a lot of them were incomplete, or there's wee notes lost in the floods, that kind of stuff. So stormwater is probably the poor cousin. So we don't know a lot about some of the stormwater assets from several borough councils that were wrapped up into this one. So there are gaps, sure.
Any other questions? No? I'm happy to move the receive the recommendation as recommendation. Do I second that? Thank you. That's all those in favour, please say aye. Carry it. Go to on page 59. That's to road operations.
Mr. Chairman, councillors. August road operations report. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the major roading contract activities in August. Maintenance spend across all three maintenance contracts totaled 2.78 million to the end of August. RFSs 122, down 22% on previous year. Seem to be fluctuating quite a bit at the moment, up and down, just very weather related, to be fair. So, emergency flood repairs total 1.65 million out of our budgeted $2 million for the year. The remaining flood works include a Taotea to Tapri slip, which has since been completed, the Clane Road, which we will touch on next, and Ellis Road rehabilitation is underway with some flanking and earthworks completed. 25 health and safety audits completed by our contractors and 14 near misses reported. Metalling and grading is expected. Metalling's still up a bit after that big start to the year. Pavement rehabilitations, Belford Lusser has been awarded to South Roads and handed over to project delivery team for construction. Package 2, the central area rehabilitations, has actually gone out to tender yesterday. So we'll be waiting till the 29th of October for that to close. Otapiri Gorge has been awarded to the roading company and handed over to the project delivery team. Tokanui Gorge Road Highway is still out for design with Bonus Consultants. Four Rows Otara Seal Widening is awarded to the roading company and handed over to project delivery team for construction. It's due to start this week. Resurfacing tenders have been awarded. Bridges, 9 completed with a 10th added to the southern area package, which is Horton Road. Due to that bridge requiring a significant amount of maintenance, that it was very close to a new bridge, so we've proceeded with that option. 3 bridges completed in the northern package, and South Roads are starting to make some good traction on that. Selection of photos, Lake Monowai Bridge over the canal. The removal of the Bailey Bridge is currently underway, and the completion of that is forecasted to be completed this month. Just the general attachment of the A3 reports for the month. And any questions?
Thank you. Just an executive summary of 5 and 6. We spent 1.6 million on the roofs and flood repairs, and I see there's still some remaining work to be done. Are you confident that we'll stay within the $2.1 million budget?
Yes, I think we'll land very, very close to it. It's still an accurate estimated sum.
Open up for questions, Councillor Byers.
Thanks, Chair. 14 near misses. Is that high?
Near misses is probably something which is underreported, but that's not high, not at all. I think that's probably very low for in reality out in the field. Because that could be.
That's people, isn't it?
Yes, that could be driving to work traffic near miss, or it could be there's lots of potential incidents that could make up that figure.
Yeah. So it's only a matter of time before there's not a near miss. Well, I'm just wondering if there's a theme or something there that's contributing to these.
So, sorry, Mr. Chairman, so that's one of the reasons why sort of push in our contractors as well, try and push to collect the near miss data, because once you actually collect that an incident's happened, well, it's too late. So there's a big drive to try and collect the near. Some of the contractors term it more as a near hit rather than a near miss, just from a terminology perspective, but it's not necessarily, say, vehicle related. It could be anything. Say a trailer being hooked up and a coupling's come undone, that could have resulted in something else. That will also get logged as a near miss or a near hit, as an example. So it's those incidents that a lot of the time people may just brush off as, well, if that was a close call, is actually collecting that data to do exactly that, to establish whether there's a theme there, or use a trailer one, because it is one that's actually come up through our alliances before, and then there was an issue noticed, and then they put measures in place to prevent an incident hopefully happening in the future because of that near miss being reported.
It's taken a very long time. for companies to encourage your staff to be able to report those. And we need to support those near misses. And if you have that culture within the organisation, you then start to capture some of the issues that are happening. You can take proactive action to address those issues. So if it's 14, if it's 12, or 2, it's important that they are being recorded so that they can be managed because of those aspects. So it's very important. I have a degree of confidence that we actually see that number that there's been 14 reports. It gives me encouragement that people feel comfortable to be able to report. So it's good. Councillor Hart?
Yes, I'm sort of halfway agree with the comments there, but I had a bit of a laugh when I looked at the incident report. What the comic was of the road, particularly the one about the chickens ran out in front of grader, resulting in heavy braking. Goodness me. And I think the first one and the last one go together.
Just a question on the Waimea Alliance summary, on that risk one with the Riddlesdale Waikaia Road. So is that going to come to council to determine, or is that council staff to determine, or?
So in terms of the ones with the tree root, that is trying to gather those costs and work out a mechanism of how best to manage that, because we are mindful, depending on the decision, it could set a precedent. So we do want council to be aboard on whatever process that is. And because of the nature of the work in terms of repairs to the road, they'll have to come to council irrespective, just because of the value of the work required as well.
Councillor Duffy?
Oh, just a comment on the near misses. I think that you can look at them as a way that an accident was avoided. And I think the learnings from those are absolutely important. Just on the identified risk in the Provo Alliance, there's mention of that Shaslands Highway failure. So I presume that was the section of road that last got sealed about 15 to 20 years ago. And is that to do with the soil conditions under the road, or is that to do with the bush, or what is the pattern there?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that section, I believe, has probably got some issues with the pavement.
The pavement?
It was the last section done, and it was the last section to be fully constructed out of Mears gravel. So it may require some more research, but that was the turning point on aggregate sources out of Mears, that section.
Right. And so the question about will a reseal work, that the answer to that lies in whites.
So through Mr. Chair,
the way it reads, there's some doubt as to whether the reseals worth doing, or what is the question?
Yeah. So that's sort of question we often pose is part of it is it worth doing the repairs and then resurfacing, and then we only get 5 years out of that reseal rather than a full reseal cycle, which typically is, or averages around 13 years. So that's a question that's really coming up, considering the failures. Is that value for money proposition there? How much confidence do we have if we did the repairs, we're not going to continue to see the rest of the road fail? And leading back to the question around the pavement, that's where we'd actually undertake some test pits, carry out the sampling of the aggregate below the road, and then do some engineering analysis to say how much confidence do we have in, yeah, we will achieve a reseal cycle, or no, we're not. At best, we may be expecting 5 years or 6 years, so we're rather better off considering that for a full pavement rehabilitation and investing the money in that way. So do the long-term repair work and then we can walk away, so to say, rather than run the risk of 5 years' time we'll be back here having the same discussion or having to do a pavement rehabilitation. So that's where the net present value work that we do for our pavement rehabs come into it. It's looking at the failures, how much we're expecting to fail in the future, and that sort of analysis helps us determine where we're best to do a repair and reseal or do a pavement rehabilitation. So that work hasn't been done yet for that section.
Right. And so the other point about the Brighton Glencoe slip, so that's still showing signs of movement If that continues, is there a plan B or?
Not at this stage. The plan B is to continue to monitor it, because the next steps would be probably close to $1 million+ fix that would be required.
So that Willow thing that did in a few places a few years ago, is that an expensive mitigation or?
No, that for the Willow, or comparatively speaking, will probably be $80,000 or $100,000 intervention. But the Willow isn't necessarily suited to all conditions.
Yeah. And then over the road, the condition performance, and just in relation to the photo lines, what's that telling us? Is that actually good? Does that show that the faults are low? Or is that showing that there's below the provision of what we should be?
No, so what's part of that is the likes of our roadway testing that we carry out, is just to indicate how our network's tracking. But for our
so we should be quite pleased with those, should we, or not?
Yeah, but there's nothing alarming at this stage. Yeah, it's just to provide a bit more context that generally with the road we do it once a year as a snapshot, but actually the teams are out there on a monthly basis doing it. So it's just giving a bit of context.
Very early in the year. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
On page 69 under financial commentary for the photo lines, one crew will go off contract as we do every year to help bring back on track. So
typically what can happen with, depending on the type of work, we'll use the gravelling as an example. We'll bring on extra crews or pre-mix crews for our pre-resale repairs. It's quite specialised work. They'll do the work that's programmed in the area, and then they'll move on to the next area. So using South Roads as our contract as an example, they'll go and do the Waimea lines, do the work there, and they'll move over to the central, and they won't go back to the Waimea again. That's them done for the year. The same with the metalling. They'll bring on extra crews to. There's a bit of a different philosophy between Fulton Hogan and South Roads, but in some cases they'll come through, push out as much work as they can, and then that's done for the year, and they'll drip feed the rest, rather than having crews that same level or intensity of work getting carried out through the whole year. So that's where they bring crews on and off.
So, and how do we pay for that? Is it in essence unbudgeted expense?
No, it's part of the budget.
It is part of
Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions. Someone like,
just one if I may, Mr. Chairman. So I think it was in the weekend, well, it wasn't the weekend after that rain out at Wyndham, the chair of the Wyndham Community, the Waipai Community Board did email about some culverts related issues and so on, which was tied up with that flooding. So I don't know what process those sorts of requests are expected to go through, but I know that there's been no reply to her requests and comments, and I just wonder why would that be? Well, I think some of these things need discussion beyond an RFS, especially the chairman of the community board asking about issues.
Chairman, I have to comment on that. I have actually spoken to the chairperson this morning, and there's a bit more investigation work to be carried out, because there's a bit of history going back 2-3 years, and then when we've gone through a restructure, just need to understand what was done through that local aspect versus following the restructure where the roles and responsibilities sit. So there's maybe a bit of history there that I'm not aware of, and need to do a bit more investigation work. I have been in touch with the chairperson this morning by a phone call. Yeah.
Someone like to move that we receive this report. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Lindsay, for the favour, please say aye. Okay, we move to public approval, and we move to public approval. Thank you. Please call those in favour, please say aye. And then I'll join. See you back here. 11 o'clock, 15 minutes. Come and see.
Do you know with the recent surge still happening? Was there an impact on that area of Wallace-town?
At Log Street
Yeah.
slip. No, I don't know. I've asked the question actually this morning to clarify.